everybody. Welcome to the SIP Shelter in Place series on the STIR podcast, brought to you by Gazelle Media. I am your host, Trish Muyco-Tobin, and joining me, as she has been this past year, my Binge Bestie, author, entertainment columnist, and sitcom producer, Debbie Baldwin. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, Trish. Glad to be here.
We are glad to have you here. So, Deb, we have been doing this spinoff to the STIR podcast for about a year now. And if you fans of the SIP series were really paying attention about a year ago as well, Debbie Baldwin officially became an author with the release of her first ever novel, False Front. That happened about a year ago.
Yep.
And so now we're awaiting the release of book number 3, if you can believe that. Hey, Deb, can we reveal the title yet?
Of course. The title of the third book is Dark Depths, and it features another member of the Bishop security team in the exotic location of Majorca.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people don't, when you think of Majorca, you sort of think of German billionaires and topless beach, women. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there are extensive cave systems which honeycomb under Majorca and are like rich with artifacts of ancient civilizations and possibly treasure. So this book involves an archaeologist who's a new character and one of the Bishop's security guys, and a lot of complicated overlapping plots and drug traffickers and hidden treasure and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's a really fun, page turner, good beach read.
And the setting itself was already, my gosh, intriguing in and of itself. So, yeah. Wow. Okay. So we had False Front, and then the sequel to False Front, Illicit Intent. And soon we're going to have the official release of Dark Depths. You heard it here first, and we will definitely, let you know when that comes out. So you could say Deb has been quite productive during quarantine. And not only that, I mean, this entire year, she has been putting together list after list after list of binge-worthy stuff for us. And this week's list, of course, is our Mother's Day edition, Debbie. Last year, we did a Father's Day edition of Best Movie Dads. This time around, it's similar, but I don't think we could label it Best Movie Mom.
No, right? I think this is the list of movies to watch with mom on Mother's Day.
Yes.
And if I were being like completely honest, I probably would have put like Magic Mike on the list, like moms need a little.
I'm trying to remember, was there even a mom in that movie? Okay.
Just a daddy.
Yes. So this is our Mother's Day list. And again, don't yell at us. Don't write to us. Don't email us. We're not talking about best moms in the traditional way.
No, this is
we're talking about like unforgettable moms. Yeah.
That might be fun to watch with mom on Mother's Day.
Exactly. Okay. So the first movie on our list is from 1987, and it is the movie Baby Boom.
And Baby Boom is sort of the ultimate, movie about motherhood because it features a character, J.C. Wyatt, who's played by Diane Keaton, who is a career-minded executive. She's fierce. She is not interested in any of the sort of traditional trappings in her gender role. She's swimming with the sharks, and she inherits, I guess is the only way to say it, a 14-month-old baby named Elizabeth. And it does not hurt that the baby in this movie is the most beautiful child I think I've ever seen on film.
It's funny that you say this is the ultimate film about motherhood when the premise is this movie's about somebody who never planned on
exactly. Motherhood. It's like how that bond how it works sort of backwards in the movie, and that she becomes a mother and then realizes how much that, kind of fulfills her. And also one thing that I applaud about this movie, and this movie is 25 years old, is no, I'm sorry, 35 years old.
Yeah.
Is that they don't force her out of her career-minded aspirations in the film. Because she's smart and she's together and she's a woman, she figures out how to have it all, which is,
Yes.
a much more modern concept in terms of women and, female characters in film. So Diane Keaton, Sam Shepard, another bonus for mom,
Yeah.
plays Diane Keaton moves out to the country with this baby, and after a small breakdown, wakes up on a doctor's table. This is one of my favorite scenes in film. And the doctor, who's this handsome Sam Shepard, is leaning over her, and all of a sudden she hears like a dog barking or something, and she kind of looks over, and he's the vet. Like the doctor was busy and couldn't tend to her, so they took her to the vet. The movie's hilarious. It's charming. It's well acted. It's just one of my favorites.
It is hilarious. And I love the overall message, like you said, proving that women can have it all. The screenwriter, Nancy Myers, talked about the script being inspired by movies from the 30s and 40s, films like Bachelor, Mother, and Woman of the Year about working women, and kind of worked into this, like you said, this modern concept about being able to successfully balance all of that and kind of defined new motherhood, so to speak. So our next film, now this was just, I don't even know how to describe this film. It's from 1990, and it is the film Postcards from the Edge. The cast is just unbelievable.
And I mean, this movie is a tour de force for Shirley MacLaine, and Meryl Streep are so fantastic in this film. And you just know, as neurotic and damaged and screwed up as these roles are and their relationship is, that they both must have loved playing these parts. Meryl Streep plays an actress who has an addiction issue, and after an incident is admitted into rehab, and the studio where she is contracted informs her that she cannot come back to work unless she is staying with a responsible adult who happens to be the mother who has spent her life trying to overshadow her and steal the attention. And I mean, it's this fantastic dynamic from the get-go. Meryl Streep as this, she's a recovering addict. She's trying to put her life back together. She's trying to save her career. And then the responsible adult who's supposed to be helping her heal is driving her to drink, so to speak.
It's hilarious and it's sad at the same time. It's like watching a train wreck, but my gosh, those two actresses on screen are just riveting.
It is unbelievable to watch. And then you've got the supporting cast that includes Dennis Quaid, Richard Dreyfuss, Gene Hackman, Annette Bening in an early role. And that's just, the icing on the cake. It's a great story. It's really, a showcase for the two women. But that mother-daughter dynamic, which has moments of intense affection, and that moment where you say to your mom, like, I don't like you right now, but I love you. It's like that kind of a push and pull. And it's
more a mature relationship. And we have to note that this movie, of course, the screenplay is based on Carrie Fisher's semi-autobiography of the same name. Carrie Fisher never really admitted that this is her relationship with her also famous mother, Debbie Reynolds. If you had read the book, you'll know that the mother character is only mentioned like in 10 pages or less. And so, but a lot of people have said this parallels her relationship with her mother. Amazingly enough, Carrie Fisher was approached by Liza Minnelli, who told her, "This book is me and my mom." Judy Garland and
Uh-huh.
Liza Minnelli, apparently closer in terms of the storyline versus Carrie Fisher, the author of the book. So I found that really, really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And it's funny because you can, Debbie Reynolds, I mean, it's Shirley MacLaine is fabulous. And but in my head, I can almost picture Debbie Reynolds in that role.
Well, Debbie Reynolds wanted the role. She wanted to play Doris, the mom, but apparently director Mike Nichols already had McLean in mind. Otherwise, it might have gone to
Fantastic.
Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah, I wouldn't have changed a thing with this movie. It's wonderful.
It is. It certainly is. All right, we're going to move on to 1993. And this movie is based, speaking of books, based on Amy Tan's blockbuster novel of the same name. And that is The Joy Luck Club.
And this film, I think, is sort of the ultimate Mother's Day film in the sense that the entire movie is about relationships between mothers and daughters, whether it's the women who are mothers now and their relationships with their mothers or their relationships with their daughters. And these four women who are immigrants from China and San Francisco, dealing with culture clash and breaking barriers in relationships and empowering women. And I cannot go into the plot in any more detail than that, or we will be here all day because it is complicated.
It is complicated. You're right about that. If you had read the book at all, you would probably wonder, if you'd read the book first before seeing the movie, how this complexity would translate on screen. But they did a fairly good job. But again, I suggest reading that book to get all those other layers. And like you said, it really is the foundation of this film, how those relationships work out. It's a great film for this month, not just for Mother's Day. It's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Uh-huh.
Perfect. Two for the price of one. And gosh.
Yeah. And I think the really kind of wonderful thing about this film is it's as much about the daughters learning from their mother's experiences as it is the mothers learning how to approach their daughters in this new environment. So it's character development like you cannot believe. I mean, these characters grow and blossom from beginning to end. It's really a great, and I've not read the book, but I know it's a fantastic book.
Deb, you have to read it. And somehow, that was able to be translated onto screen. That's why I was kind of impressed with this movie. I had my reservations at first. So did author Amy Tan. So did one of the producers, or actually the director, Wayne Wang, about, how this complex storytelling was going to be
translate
for the movie. Correct. The dividing line, like you said, for the generations is the mothers are Chinese immigrants and the daughters, all of them are daughters, they're first generation Chinese Americans. So there's that. And the reason that it is called the Joy Luck Club is because the moms met once a week to play mahjong, gossiped, eat food. And I have to say, that was an environment I grew up in because my mom and her friends did that as well. The only difference is instead of speaking Chinese, they spoke Tagalog and they ate Filipino food. But pretty much everything is the same. They talk about the daughters talk about them. So it's a very, very familiar
I imagine it translates across all cultures.
Yes, definitely. So for those of you who are fans of this movie, apparently one of the producers of the movie, Ronald Bass, had indicated that a sequel was in the works and that the story for the sequel would take place 25 years after the movie timeline. So, and they are hoping to get the original cast together and make it really a multi-generational film for the moms in the original movie to be the grandmothers and the daughters to be the mothers.
Very cool.
So, we'll see what happens. All right, this next film, The Joy Luck Club, tearjerker. So prepare yourself for that. This next film, prepare to laugh, probably like nonstop laughter from beginning to end. This next film is about three divorcees whose husbands have left them for much younger wives. And that is 1996's The First Wives Club.
I mean, and talk about, when you think of buddy movies and you think of men who have partnered up and to make great films, or you think, oh, I'd love to see like Pacino and De Niro and Gene Hackman do a film together, or I'd like to see this or that. When you think of women in that role, you think Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, Diane Keaton. What a trio they make in this film. And this movie starts off on a dark note, which is they're a group of 4 college friends.
Yes.
The 4th woman, who's played by Stockard Channing, starts the movie off writing a letter to each of her 3 best friends from college and then committing suicide after her husband of so many years has married his mistress, or has divorced her and is marrying a much younger woman. So these 3 women kind of reunite after being apart for many years since college, and they're all in these troubled marriages or divorced or divorcing. And they come up, the plot is sort of incidental, but they come up with this plot to kind of get their power back, and they're not going to be like walked on by these men. And it's one thing to say, I'm leaving you. And I think all of them are being left for younger women.
Yes.
And, but it's another to say, I'm leaving you. I'm taking all the money you made. I'm leaving you with nothing, whatever. And the 3 of them work together to sort of get their revenge on these dastardly men. And it is a funny, entertaining, fantastic movie. I still remember Diane Keaton, like when they're first meeting and she's sitting on the couch and she's like, for 30 years, I did his laundry and I cleaned his room and I fixed his meals. And they're like, you did? And she's like, well, I supervised.
And then the other thing, another thing I like about this, like you said, the whole message about empowerment. This movie too was based on a book, in fact, a 1992 novel written by Olivia Goldsmith. And the script for the movie was reworked a little bit to not focus on the women as victims, but rather as empowered women. And that is what you see throughout this film. The film may be really like goofy and ridiculous at times.
Uh-huh. But in a go with it kind of way,
Yes,
I love
definitely.
stuff like that. It doesn't bug me one bit if it's not realistic.
Oh gosh, not at all, not at all. Okay, so Deb, Diane Keaton, Goldie Hawn, and Bette Midler were born within 45 days of each other. Okay.
What do you know?
What do you know? So when they were filming this movie, all 3 actresses turned 50 years old.
Huh, that's great.
Kind of cool. And
That's
I double checked to make sure. I said, this is such a weird statistic. So I made sure that was indeed the case. And so that makes them this year, they're all 75 years old. If you can believe that.
And they all still look fantastic.
They all look fantastic.
Brava, ladies.
Yes. And of all 3, Goldie Hawn is the only divorcee in real life. Of course, Diane Keaton never married, and Bette has been married for more than 35 years to her husband. So yes. That's what's going on there. And
Goldie, despite the fact that she was divorced from Hudson, I can't remember his first name, has been with
Kurt Russell. Hello.
For maybe almost that long for as long as Bette, maybe.
My goodness, yes, they have been together for quite some time. And for those of you who really enjoyed this movie since 2003, so this movie came out 25 years ago. Since 2003, there's been talk of a sequel with each of the lead stars at various times indicating that they were game for a sequel. The last we heard about it was in 2016 when Netflix reportedly expressed interest in making a sequel for it. But according to Goldie Hawn at the time, the script was not working. So stay tuned for that. However, this was a surprise to me. There is a reunion in the works among the 3 stars in this film in development called Family Jewels. Deb, have you heard about this?
No.
It was announced last year, and about 3 women who are forced to spend the holidays together with all their kids and grandkids. So we'll see what happens with that.
That sounds great. I'm up for that.
Right. We might have to add it to our Christmas movie list. So yes. Okay. So we move on. This next film, speaking of Diane Keaton, has a little bit of a connection with Diane Keaton because it's been said that during the casting of the twin daughters for this movie, director Nancy Meyers reportedly was looking for a young Diane Keaton. And that is what you get with 1998's The Parent Trap. And that twin daughter, of course, was Lindsay Lohan in her film debut.
Now, this movie, I don't know if it was an issue in the original film, but it was certainly an issue in the remake that never in a million years would divorcing couples split up twins.
Yeah.
And so I think that they all just kind of said, the movie cannot work if this doesn't happen, and we can't think of a plausible reason to do it other than what the original movie did. So you're going to have to just go with it.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. And so we have Dennis Quaid again. Was also in Postcards from the Edge. And the lovely, may she rest in peace, Natasha Richardson as his ex-wife. She's a wedding gown designer. He lives on a ranch in Northern California. They divorced after a tumultuous, fiery romance. And, each took one twin. And then as the story goes, the twins meet up again at camp.
Yeah.
They don't like each other right away. Maybe they don't notice that they're identical right away. Again, we're still going with it.
Suspended, yes, yeah.
They figure out that they are identical twins, and the fun starts there.
The fun starts there, and it was a fun movie. It's a Disney film, and that original film that we were referring to was made in 1961, and so this remake was done in 1998. Speaking of remakes, our next film is also a remake from the 1950 original. We are talking about Cheaper by the Dozen.
This is a 2003 movie, and it stars Steve Martin and Bonnie Hunt. He's a high school football coach in Central Illinois, and they have 12 children.
Yes.
It was, they could have written the script that they were going to be on a reality show. The mom, played by Bonnie Hunt, writes a book about being a mother to a dozen children, and she gets a publisher. So she's getting ready to leave on a big book tour. Meanwhile, Steve Martin has gotten a job offer to coach college football in Evanston, Illinois. What school could that be? Where my son goes, Northwestern University. And he decides, for the good of the family, he's moving them all up to Evanston, Illinois, and the kids do not want to go. So, really, do I need to explain the plot about Steve Martin alone with trying to take care of 12 kids and start a new job? You can guess what happens.
Not really. You sold me on Steve Martin. I just love him in any role.
And his delivery, there's just no one can do it the way Steve Martin does. And the kids, they don't like the oldest sister's boyfriend. So while he's in the shower, they soak his underwear in meat. So the dogs will go crazy when he's wearing it. And
don't try this at
Steve
home.
Martin, disciplines them. It's just thinking about the way he says the lines makes me laugh. It's a charming, great story, and a story about how indispensable a mother can be. In this case, Bonnie Hunt's character has to abandon her book tour and come home and kind of manage the chaos. And so,
kind of thinking about this movie reminds me of last year's Father's Day list, where this could probably belong there too, with Steve Martin, because Steve Martin, of course, made our list, one of our big favorites.
For
But
Father of
this
the
is kind of
Bride.
like the alter ego of what can go wrong
Yes. Yes.
when it comes to fatherhood.
Yes. Well, he only had one child in Father of the Bride, so maybe that was all he could handle.
Two, don't forget the little guy.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
2
Okay.
kids like 10 years apart. Was about like
Exactly,
manageable.
exactly. All right. So our next film comes to us from 2006. I have to say, really enjoyed this movie. And that is the film Aquila and the Bee. And really the lead role was Keke Palmer, who was a little girl then, and she is all grown up
I
now.
know, Keke Palmer. And this is a great story about mother, daughter, and it's a great story about diversity, and it's a great story about following your passion. And Aquila is a little girl who grows up in South LA, and her teachers notice right away in her public school that she has an affinity for spelling. And but she is not like this amazing student, this phenom or wunderkind who everyone's kind of coddling. She misses school, she doesn't have great grades, the
Correct.
mom is frustrated with her, and she seeks out, various kind of mentors throughout the course of the film, the most important of which being Lawrence Fishburne, who plays her spelling coach as she pursues this dream of trying to enter and win the Scripps National Spelling Bee, which if you've ever watched the Scripps National Spelling Bee, if you've not watched it, you got to watch it.
You got to
It's
watch it.
captivating. I mean, it's
Yes.
these kids and you just can't even believe. But as a result, Aquila forms these friendships with these other spellers, and it's a culturally diverse cast and a very interesting friendship dynamic with these children.
Yes.
It's a heartwarming story. Aquila is sneaking around doing a lot of the spelling, and when the mom finds out, there's hell to pay for that. And she has an odd dynamic with the coach who she discovers lost a daughter about her age. So there's, a lot of feels going on in this movie.
There are a lot of moving parts, but the story really comes together really, really well. And of course, Mom is played by Angela Bassett, and I thought that role just fit her like a glove.
Perfect. Tiger Mom, yeah.
Yes, scared of her. You at first, I wouldn't want a mom like that, but at the same time, you could understand where she was coming from. And again, just played to perfection by Angela Bassett. And you said, this movie was inspired by the Scripps National Spelling Bee, and it so happened that the writer and director of this movie thought of it after seeing the spelling bee, when he observed that a majority of the contestants came from families that were well off. And I think that is statistically true.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sought to make a movie that showed you it's not just the wealthy kids who are interested in spelling. There are other stories to be had here. And that is how we have this wonderful story of Aquila and the Bee.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's a scene when the coach kind of abandons her and she's talking to a neighbor. I can't remember the exact conversation, but the woman says to her, Aquila says, I don't have a coach anymore. And the woman says, look around you. You have 50,000 coaches. And all of these people in her neighborhood rally to help her study. And I mean, I'm getting choked up just describing it. It's
you gave me goosebumps when you described that scene. Yeah, that's one of my favorite
inspirational
scenes as well.
movie. Yeah, good Mother's Day movie for sure.
I completely agree, and I believe it's making the rounds on cable right now. So
I think it is
definitely worth your while.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so our next movie, it's another movie that was adapted from a book, and it is 2009's The Blind Side, starring Sandra Bullock as the mom, Leanne Toohey, and her husband, played by Tim McGraw, the country superstar.
Yes,
really surprised me when I saw that at first.
This is adapted from the Michael Lewis novel, who everyone's familiar with his work. He wrote The Big Short, Liar's Poker. He's got a new book coming out next month called Premonition, which looks amazing. He is a prolific and brilliant writer. And this book is the story is my favorite, I think, of all of them because it's so touching. The story of, the Tuohys adopting Michael Orr,
Uh-huh.
who's a boy at his son's school who is essentially homeless, and they take him in, and it is this incredibly touching story of mother and son, mother and adopted son, and how he becomes a part of their family. And then it is a true story. They live in Memphis to this day. Michael Orr did become a professional football player and played 9 seasons, mostly with the Baltimore Ravens. He retired in 2017. He was an offensive tackle, which is what the source of the title of the book and the movie is. It's the player on the offensive team that protects the quarterback on his blind side, which is the most vulnerable side. And if you can remember the way the movie starts, it's a hideous opening. It's the actual clip of Joe Theismann having his leg broken in a sack when his offensive tackle, who the regular player was out that day, and this was a second string person who wasn't protecting him the way he should have been.
Yes.
You see like what could happen when your blind side is not protected. So it's a incredible movie. It's one of my favorites of all time. Sandra Bullock absolutely deserved the Oscar for that.
Yes.
Little trivia, Julia Roberts passed up the role. She was offered it first, turned it down.
I did see that. And did you see why she reportedly passed up the role?
My guess is that she was otherwise committed. That's usually the situation. I mean, I can't see looking at that script and thinking, nah, I'm not doing anything, but I don't want to do this one.
Well, this one is the reason I found, and I'm not sure whether it is true or not, but she had reservations of playing a devout Christian.
Oh.
I'm thinking, okay, you're an actress. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? But apparently Sandra Bullock reportedly had the same reservations, but she did agree to star after meeting with the real Leanne Toohey. And not just that, she took a pay cut, instead opted for a portion of the profits. The right call. The movie made $309 million. And so, my goodness, she really made a killing with that on a $29 million budget. So $29 million budget, $309 revenue.
Well, these actresses, they can pick and choose their roles when they're at that level, and that's good for them. But it's odd to me because I would think Julia Roberts probably would not hesitate to take a role where she plays a devout Muslim or, a devout Hindu. But for some reason, the Christianity bothered her, which is okay. I mean, it's her prerogative, but
I'm like, isn't that what actresses are supposed to do?
Dig deep and find the role, you know what I mean? That's your job as an actor. I would think it would be a challenge to accept a role that embraced something that you personally did not, but that's just me.
You would think, right? Okay, so, but it worked out. Sandra Bullock, role of a lifetime, a memorable role for her.
Fantastic.
This is the first time a movie made more than $200 million with the name of a sole actress over the title. So it's noted for that as well. And, Sandra Bullock, of all the names in Hollywood, probably one of those names who can definitely deliver. So, okay, so our next movie, I have to say, if I was given this list, this might be the movie that I would want to see again because I had so much fun with this movie. And that is 2010's The Kids Are All Right. Well, first of all, Deb, it's because it has Mark Ruffalo in it. And
see, mom needs a little something nice to look at on Mother's Day.
Exactly. And then second, of course, you have the lead stars, and that is Annette Bening and Julianne Moore. And this is an interesting plot.
It's an interesting plot, and it's a breakthrough movie. It's one of the first mainstream movies to feature a same-sex couple. So, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is still late to the game, in my opinion, but good for them, Hollywood. So Annette Bening and Julianne Moore's characters, Nick and I think she's Jules, I think is Julianne Moore's character.
Yes, yes, yes.
And Jules is a stay-at-home mom. They have 2 children. By each one of them has given birth by the same sperm donor.
Same
So they
sperm.
have biological half children. Yes.
Yes.
And but boy, that's some math in my head I'm doing right now. Right. Biological half children. And Nick, the Annette Bening character, is the breadwinner, correct. And
she is a doctor, I believe, and Jules has a landscaping business that she's trying to get off the ground. Yeah.
And the 2 children, the son expresses this desire to find the biological father, and that is the catalyst that starts this movie rolling. He and his sister track down their biological father, the sperm donor, who is played by Mark Ruffalo, who is a restaurant owner and is thrilled and very much wants to be involved in their lives. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun,
Just
dun.
what the parents want. A third parent coming in with opinions.
And somebody as good looking as Mark Ruffalo. I have to say, Deb, I believe this is Mark Ruffalo at his hottest. I know we're talking about a Mother's Day list, but you said yourself, treat yourself by watching Mark Ruffalo in this movie.
He's so hot that he turns, that he seduces a lesbian.
Oh my God, okay.
He has an affair with Jules in the movie. She claims, and it's the dynamic, it's, you know, obviously these screenwriters are smart and careful, and these are individuals, not stereotypes, and their actions reflect the actions of the individual character. And Jules is feeling extremely neglected and alone and unsupported in her marriage to Nick.
In her marriage, yes.
The Mark Ruffalo character provides that, and that leads to other things, which then, you know, complicates this whole situation.
How the movie unravels is the most fun thing in movies that you can ever see. I think what it really works really well is the chemistry between Annette Bening and Julianne Moore. I mean, you believe that they are a married lesbian couple.
100%. The acting is phenomenal. The dynamic with all 3 of those main characters is fantastic. There's hostility, there's attraction, there's so many layers of stuff going on. And Annette Bening won a Golden Globe for this role, and it was very well deserved.
Yes.
But yeah, the kids are all right, and it's and it is a feel-good movie. It has this great message at the end of, you know, everything doesn't all work out in this perfect little bow because it's an indie film and it's complicated and gritty, but it's still really, really enjoyable.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So you mentioned Annette Bening got the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy. The film won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy, and it was also nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. It did not win, but that goes to show that the caliber of this film. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. All right. So our next movie, speaking of Julia Roberts, this is really an ensemble cast, including Julia Roberts, and that is 2016's Mother's Day.
Yes, and this movie is it falls in that category with Love Actually, Valentine's Day, What to Expect When You're Expecting, these gajillion plots that all kind of interlace. This movie was probably the most overlooked of that whole.
Of all that, yeah.
That whole little group of movies all came out like one after the next for about, 5 or 6 years. There was another one. And this one kind of flew under the radar. And actually, I think I might like it the best. It's the smartest script in terms of the way these plots layer and ultimately connect. And it's just really each plot is interesting. You always think like if I had to go back into Love Actually and cut one of those plots, like, oh, I'd cut the fluffer, or oh, I'd cut, this or that. Or if you
those 2 guy friends the one who travels to America. He was
Yes, yes,
yeah,
the British
so
friends who want to
annoying.
go to Wisconsin and have sex. What, like it seems like all of those movies have one plot that's you could do without.
And yeah,
This movie, I think all of the plots they involved Jennifer Aniston, Kate Hudson, Julia Roberts, Jason Sudeikis, Timothy Oliphant. They all interweave at the end in a nice payoff. You know, you think like, I put my coin in the slot machine? Am I gonna hit a jackpot? And yes,
yeah.
the answer is yes. And so yeah, and Mother's Day is a definitely worth seeing.
Yes, and notable because this was director Gary Marshall's final film. He passed away just a few days after the film's release, actually. And we were talking earlier about Julia Roberts and how she can command definitely top dollar in the world of Hollywood. Debbie, Julia Roberts showed up to work on this film for 4 days. That's all she was needed for. And for those 4 days, she earned $3 million for her trouble. I know. What else can you say? There's nothing else to say.
Next.
Next. Okay. So we are down to our final film. This movie shows what happens to moms who are overworked and taken for granted. And that is the film Bad Moms from 2016.
I have to say, like, this movie, I've lived this movie. Like, I could have
In
been.
what way?
I mean, just that sense of every mom, you go into like your kid's school and there's that mom and she's got the perfect hair and the perfect makeup and she's in this full outfit. And I'm in, my Gap, like sweatshirt and yoga pants and maybe like my socks don't match. And I'm late to pick up my kid and she's telling me like, oh, I want to have these muffins flown in from a bakery in New York for this birthday party next week. And I'm like, I got to find my people. It's about finding your people as a
Okay,
mom.
which one of your sweet kids did that? Demanded muffins flown in from New York City.
No. I'm saying the other mother.
Oh,
like the perfect mother is like, oh, my kid's birthday is coming up and I'm having muffins flown in or whatever. It's just like, I'm like, I've got to regrout my tub. I'll get back to you later.
right.
But so yeah, like moms can relate to that feeling of just like there's someone there doing it better than them. They're not living up to expectations. They're not meeting the standard. It's a feeling of inadequacy that I think is inherent in motherhood. You can always be doing better and you always feel like you should be doing better. This movie features Mila Kunis and Kristen Bell and Katherine Hahn as the bad moms.
Yes.
Who and are all in different ways. Katherine Hahn is she kind of lets her kids do their own thing and goes out and has fun and parties and, maybe too much. And then you got Mila Kunis, who's having some marital problems and is trying desperately to be a good mother. And then Kristen Bell, who's overly helicopter mom, hovering, protective, trying to control things that she can't control, which is the other, little demon of motherhood. There's that control issue. And then you've got Christine Applegate in this great role as that perfect mom who's the president of the PTA and, does everything right and always seems to catch you at your worst moment. And it's just the story of these three moms trying to find balance and find friendship and empowerment and navigate motherhood. And it's a fun, funny, crazy movie.
It was quite a refreshing movie when it came out in 2016. And I don't know if you know this, Deb, but this movie inspired the birth of a pseudo holiday called Bad Mother's Day.
Oh,
and that is apparently since 2016 has been celebrated on July 29. So if you don't,
I'll mark my calendar.
So if you don't consider yourself a good mother, don't celebrate this weekend. Celebrate July 29. It might be more fun that way.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Okay. So there you have it. And of course, we can't let you go without dessert. And for our featured dessert, something to make for mom or to make as a treat for yourself, or actually both, because seriously, Deb, this dessert, it's that easy. I have to say, this has been the easiest, really, really good dessert that I've made in recent memory.
Bring it on.
I say that because this recipe is classified as pie. But you really don't have to go through the labor of making pie, like rolling the dough and doing all that, because we are making impossible coconut pie. I don't know if you've heard of this recipe before, but all of it is this: you gather your flour, your butter, your eggs, your milk, your sugar, your coconut, and you throw that all into a blender. You throw it all in a blender. And then after you blend it for a few seconds, you pour it into your pie plate, put it in the oven, and voila, you have pie. And Debbie, my God, the pie is so good. For some reason, I guess the way the ingredients react with each other, things settle in the bottom to just kind of make their own crust. And then the coconut floats, and so that stays on top. And so you've got this nice toasted coconut on top. I mean, it's an actual pie, but you don't.
I'm all over. That sounds awesome. I want to make that right now.
Debbie, I tell you, if not for my husband, who is kind of helping me along, we have this big pie here, I'd be eating the entire pie. It is that good. It is that good.
All right.
All right, so that's what we've got going on. We've got impossible coconut pie. And as always, you can find that recipe on gazellemagazine.com. And Debbie, can you believe this is SIP series episode number 40?
I cannot believe it. But we are vaccinated. We are getting out of the house.
Exactly. And so now that we're all slowly emerging from the pandemic, Debbie and I plan to do our own emergence as well. So our SIP Shelter in Place series will be taking a break, but that doesn't mean the end of the STIR podcast. Debbie and I will be back at some point. Maybe the next time we see you, we'll be back in our studio in some shape or form, and we will continue to be looking out for the best movies, shows, and stuff that's worth your precious binge time. So we want to thank Debbie Baldwin for being with us this entire ride, and of course for coming up with all those movies for us. Thank you, Debbie.
I mean, half the time we should do a list of like the movies that I've cut off, because I feel like there's been like 2 or 3 lists.
No kidding.
Making one list.
No kidding. No kidding. And we already gave Debbie some allowances. I mean, she had a top 11 list instead of a top 10, because that's how crazy she is. And also, we want to do a quick thank you to our editor extraordinaire, Carson Crow, who made us look
Carson.
And also for Mike Muyco, my cousin, who composed our ultra cool STIR podcast theme music. And lastly, but not the least, thank you all for joining us. We will be seeing you. Goodbye.